Hello everyone, welcome to this new edition of In Conversation with ITL. So today we delve into one of the subjects which passion ITL as a firm. So we are pleased to welcome today Anja Cawood, the Head of Sustainability of Phatisa. Anja is one of the seasoned experts over the continent. She has been working with top consulting firms across the continent for more than 13 years now. Phatisa, as you might know, is one of the leading food chain private equity firm in Africa. Our second guest today is Harsheenee Aujayeb, the General Manager of ESG Intellis Solutions. ESG Intellis is one of the very close partners when it comes to ESG for ITL, and the firm is a one-stop shop firm consulting over ESG for both Mauritius as well as the continent. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks, Varounen, and looking forward to our chat.
Great. Same for us. So first question for you, Anja. So Phatisa has been building a very strong reputation in impact investing across Africa. Could you maybe kick things off by sharing an overview of your new firm? What would be the primary goals and what makes this firm different from your previous initiatives? Thank you.
Sure. So I think, as you've mentioned, the focus at Phatisa really has been investing in the food value chain. In our first fund, we were more focused on primary agri. In our second fund, we moved more to value chain. So anything from the logistics associated with the food supply chain. We have an animal vaccines company, contract farming, packaging for food. So really anything in the food value chain. And I think that's really the area that we're planning to build on moving into our Food Fund 3. I think what we've really been trying to build and work on in Food Fund 2 is their interaction between climate, nature, and food. Obviously, the food supply chain is incredibly exposed to climate change, particularly so in the African continent. So I think that's something we've really been kind of delving into and thinking about more critically about, how does climate link back to the food supply chain, and how do we need to support our portfolio companies to be prepared for changes in climate and changes in nature. So I think that's really some of the thinking that has progressed quite a lot in Phatisa as we kind of have moved through our journey.
Thanks, Anja. Thanks a lot. So question for you, Harsheenee. So Phatisa has chosen to focus on food security for sustainable development. In your view, how critical is food security as sectors for impact investing in Africa? Is this the right area to focus on, considering the continent's unique challenges and opportunities?
Thanks, Varounen. That's a very interesting question, but maybe before I go into the question, I just wanted to highlight very quickly the difference between ESG and impact, because these terms are used interchangeably, but I just wanted to make sure that we are all, especially the audience, are all on the same wavelength. So when we talk about ESG, we're talking about how the environmental, social, and governance consideration are affecting the bottom line of a company. On the other hand, when we look at impact, we are actually looking at positive or negative outcomes of a specific initiative or project. So in a sense, we can look at impact as being a subset of ESG, but we can also look at them both separately. Now, coming to your question on food security. So food security indeed is a very critical sector for impact investments, especially when we talk about Africa. And I do believe that Phatisa's focus on this is very relevant. So let me explain very briefly why. Firstly, over 20% of Africa's population, and that's around 257 million people, are actually undernourished. And this is a significant proportion of the global hunger challenge. What's more alarming is the impact on children. Beyond hunger, malnutrition actually leads to stunted growth, vulnerability to diseases, among other things. And this poses long-term developmental challenges for our future generation. Secondly, if we look at agriculture as a sector, it actually employed like 60% of the continent's workforce. And it's very central to addressing the food security issue. And by focusing on sustainable agricultural practices, improvement of food system, not only are we creating jobs and reducing poverty, but we are also enhancing productivity. So impact investment in this space not only tackle hunger, but also fosters economic stability, which is key for long-term growth. And finally, when we're talking about food security, this is directly linked to the Sustainable Development Goals, so the UN SDGs, particularly SDG 2, which is zero hunger, and SDG 1, which is no poverty. So if we're focusing investment in the food security sector, we are not only addressing immediate food needs, but we're also contributing to broader global efforts towards sustainable development.
Great. So point on for Phatisa in terms of its new fund. So one question probably to Anja is impact investing, fund involves balancing financial returns with social and environmental outcomes. So how does Phatisa reconcile these objectives? And what approaches do you use to ensure that your investors are on board with this dual mandate?
Sure. So I think firstly, Phatisa, we are first and foremost a commercial investor, but I think by its very nature, investing in the food value chain is impactful. I think, Harsheenee touched on some of the points around kind of not only food security, the impact that has on economic development and, particularly in children and, the impact of food insecurity on a child's future potential. But I think also, we are, as an African continent, we have 60% of our land is unused arable land, which I think is, we really shouldn't be importing food as Africa. So therefore, I think the way we see our role is helping to grow the food value chain in Africa. And as I said, that and in itself is impactful. But having said that, I think to be an impact investor, you have to be intentional. And that really starts with understanding what you want to change and measuring what you want to change. So understanding your baselines, seeing what you want to change, and really understanding your theories of change around that change. So, if we say in this business, we want to increase yields by X%, how are we going to do that? If we say in business B, we want to increase the number of smallholder farmers in that business's value chain, how are we going to do that? So understanding your baseline and being very intentional about growing impact is really important. Even though as a business, we really focus on our commercial returns first. And as I said, by the nature of what we do, it is very much impact driven. There is also really the intentionality around it is very important. So, connected to that, we have a really thorough IMM, so an impact management and measurement framework in place. We're a member of the GIN. We are aligned to, IRIS Plus. And I think that's really, all been a part of our intentionality. Understanding what you want to do, but measuring, understanding your baselines, and really understanding every step change that needs to happen along the way for you to actually have the impact you desire to have is really critical part of the journey, I think.
Thanks, Anja. Which leads me directly to my next question for Harsheenee. So data credibility is often a challenge in ESG reporting, especially when speaking about Africa. How do you ensure that the metrics used to measure impact are both reliable and relevant? My first question to you. The second one is, what are some best practices which Phatisa you would recommend for impact measurement? What you would recommend? So that's really my second question to you.
I think that's a really interesting and pertinent question, because what we are seeing nowadays is that not only in Africa, ESG data credibility and relevance in ESG reporting is actually a major challenge faced by a lot of companies across the world. So having credible data and relevant data will actually help you build your trust and drive meaningful change. But how can we do that? So I think there are 4 words that we need to remember. So it's contextualization, reliability, consistency, and external verification. Let me go deeper into it. So when I say contextualization, what I mean is that you have so many ESG impact framework or standard around the world, and you can use any of them depending on your need, but you need to understand the context in which you're operating. So whatever framework or standard you're using need to be adapted or tweaked to your unique situation as a company. So different industries and regions face distinct challenges. And when you're contextualizing the framework to your situation, this will allow you to know what data to capture, what to report on. For example, what's relevant for an energy company may not be pertinent for the agricultural sector. So you need to tailor your approach in order to maintain relevance. Second word was reliability, and for this, we need to put in place robust monitoring system and governance structures. So we need to ensure that data collection and reporting processes are transparent. And for this, there's no better thing than having good governance processes, as it will help us minimize errors, improve accountability in the tracking metrics. Third was consistency. So there's one thing that I'm seeing in sustainability impact reports or annual report is that the metrics changes, but that's not really good in the long run, because if you maintain consistency over time, you will be able to track your trends, whether they are positive or negative. You will also be able to understand whether your strategies are efficient. So you need to report both on the good and bad trends. And that will only boost your credibility, because your stakeholders are more likely to trust any data when it actually tells the full story and not just the positive one. And finally, I was mentioning external verification or third-party verification. So this will not only give you the extra credibility that you need towards your stakeholder, but it will also give an additional layer of assurance. So we talk about external verification quite a lot, but we need to only take this step when our internal systems are fully operational and actually ready to support an external audit. So it shouldn't be done, just haphazardly. It needs to be planned properly and implemented properly. So I think these best practices, all in all, form the foundation of reliable and impactful ESG reporting.
Thanks, Harsheenee. So, change of topic now, and that question is addressed to Anja. So, every fund faces challenges specific to them, especially when dealing with complex issues like housing and food security. So, from a Phatisa perspective, what are some of the major challenges which you have been encountering in the past, and how have you really addressed them?
I think that's a good question. And I think if I can start maybe just by responding to something Harsheenee said around impact measurements, I think that's really great. And I was taking notes as you were speaking and, checking back to how that aligns to our approach. And I think an important thing, before I get to your question, Varounen, is not overclaiming when it comes to impact. So I think that's something that we are very mindful of at Phatisa, is understanding what our counterfactual is, understanding how much of the change is attributable to us, what percentage of influence and ownership do we have over a business. And I think that's really important to understand in impact measurement. If a business has grown their yields by 50%, can you claim all of those 50% is because of you, the investor? You can't. You need to really understand the counterfactual and make sure, you've got that in place and you've attributed only what is really attributable to you. Just wanted to respond to that from Harsheenee before I move on. But I think in terms of challenges, Varounen, I think, as Harsheenee's mentioned, I think data quality is something we battle with. And, the maturity of our portfolio companies varies. Some have been collecting ESG data for years. It's, they're pretty used to it. They've got really good systems and processes in place. And others are still on a journey, and we're working really closely with them to help build their kind of environmental and social management systems, and help them to start collecting the data that we need to really measure that our impact changes. But I think, having said that, I think, some of the challenges our portfolio companies face and we face is related to local currency, and not having access to kind of debt in local currency. So, for example, we're currently working on a decarbonization strategy with our full portfolio, which has been really exciting. So we will, as Phatisa, be able to set net zero strategies because we now have a very detailed understanding of our portfolio companies, Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3. But then the challenge with that is once you've got the strategy in place, and getting the data for the strategy was a challenge in the first place, but then it's like, where do we get the money from to make the changes recommended from the strategy? So helping connect our portfolio companies to sources of concessional financing that are in local currency and not dollar denominated, for example, because in a lot of African countries, we have quite a lot of currency fluctuation. For one of our companies based in Africa to take out a dollar denominated loan at concessional rates, they would actually prefer to take out a loan at commercial rates in their local currency. So that's something we're seeing as a challenge at an impact level, is really, making sure that, we kind of work with the companies, we know what they need to do, but then helping them find the financing to do it at rates that make sense to them. So I'd say that's one of the challenges working with impact in our portfolio companies. I think I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Anja. Thanks a lot for that response. So we've been able as ITL to witness firsthand, the impact of Phatisa on the different objectives which we've implemented from a housing food security perspective. So, question to you, Harsheenee. As Phatisa explores new objectives, what are the key trends or areas of focus would you recommend going forward? How can we continue to drive innovation while staying true to their impact goals?
Just in my opinion, and from what I'm observing, working with different companies across the continent, I think there are two main areas that come up that any impact-focused firm should prioritize. Like, we're talking about renewables and education. So these two sectors are not only crucial for Africa's sustainable development, but they also present significant opportunities for innovation and long-term impact. Now, if we look at renewables, so Africa's potential for renewable energy is immense, and yet it remains largely untapped. The facts that support this, so as of 2023, the total renewable energy capacity in Africa reached about 62 gigawatts, and that's actually a growth of nearly 5.7% in comparison to the previous years. However, overall, Africa's renewable energy capacity accounted less than 2% of the global total capacity, which is very surprising. And, investment in the renewable energy infrastructure can only be transformative for the continent. It can boost energy access, create green jobs, reduce dependency on fossil fuels, all while contributing directly to climate resilience and reducing carbon emissions. One concrete example that comes to mind, and it's kind of related to Anja's previous answer. So I'm working with a company that has a couple of buildings in Africa, and we were looking at their emissions, and we actually noticed a decrease in one of the building energy consumption. But what happened was that there was a lot of electricity outages. So obviously the electricity consumption went down, but on the other hand, the diesel consumption spiked up like really, it actually peaked. So these kind of consideration when you're reporting, you need to actually talk about what's happening, the narrative behind. I just wanted to jump on that because we're talking about renewables and carbon. And then another critical area which I think is important for Africa is education. So when we look at Africa's demographic, we actually have the youngest population in the world. So like 60% of our population are under the age of 25. And when we look at sub-Saharan Africa, for example, 70% are under 30. And this is actually a unique window to invest for the future. Access to quality education, and that includes skill development for future industries like technology, fintech, green job, is actually, I think, critical for unlocking the potential of this youth bulge. So by focusing on education, we companies can actually help cultivate a generation which is going to be equipped to tackle Africa's challenges as well as drive innovation. So in a sense, if we want to continue driving innovation while staying true to impact goals, I believe that any impact-focused fund or Phatisa need to remain flexible and adaptive. So you need to stay grounded in your mission to create long-term impact while also leveraging new tech and aligning with the global trends. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Harsheenee. Good for thought, Anja. I'm sure you will bring that back to your board and see how this can be considered eventually. Before we wrap up, is there any advice, Anja, which you would give to other impact investors looking to make a difference in Africa?
Sure. I think, on the African continent, I think we can get very bogged down by, there's like so many issues. There's unemployment, lower levels of education. There's, a lot of countries don't have sufficient electricity supply and rely a lot on generators. And, where do you start? So I think being focused in your mission is really key. So as I've mentioned at Phatisa, we are very focused on the food value chain. So understand your focus, understand your why, and really, I mentioned at the start, understand what you're measuring, how you're going to measure it, and how you really can drive change. So understanding the what you want to change, how you're going to measure, and how you can drive change. What is in your area of control? What is outside of your sphere of control? And really, I think starting there is a really good starting point. Don't try to be all things to all people. Have your focus and then kind of drill down on your focus.
Thanks a lot, Anja. Thanks. I think it has been a great exchange. At least from my perspective, I really want to thank you guys for attending this edition of ITL Insights. So yeah, thanks a lot and see you soon.
Yeah, thank you for a great session.